So while we're talking about layers, we should make sure we know some of the cool things we can do with them. First, let's run through the tools in the Tools panel under the Layers label. An important thing to note is that these can be used on vector and image layers as well as on groups, in which case it will change everything inside the group at once. We've already seen a little bit how to use the Transform Layer tool. You can use this to move, scale, or rotate a layer. Always keep in mind that this is just transforming the layer itself, not the drawings on the layer. The position, scale, and angle can always be reset by these controls up here, and you can enter values by hand if you want. Before you start using the Transform tool, you might want to make use of the next tool, the Set Origin tool. You use this to reposition the origin point to the position that makes the most sense for the drawing. This is important because when you rotate or scale, it's going to be centered around the origin point. That's also important if you use this tool, the Rotate Layer XY, which rotates the layer in 3D around both the X and Y axis, centered on the origin point. The last way you might want to transform a layer is to shear it using the Shear tool. Now, all of the transformations you do with these tools can be animated. For example, I'm going to take the Layer Transform tool, and I'm just going to move the shape to a starting point. Then I'm going to come out to frame 1 and click, and that automatically creates a keyframe for the Layer Translation property. Then I'm going to come out later on the timeline and move the shape, and that automatically creates another keyframe and animates between them. If you want to change the path that the layer takes as it animates, that's what this tool here is for, the Follow Path tool. You start on a fresh layer without animation on it. So I'm just going to select all the keyframes we made and delete them. And I need to reset the position of the layer. Then on another vector layer, I'll name it Path. I'll draw a path for the layer to follow. I'll just use the Freehand tool and make sure the stroke is off so it will be invisible. Then on the layer you want to follow the path, select the Follow Path tool, and it makes any invisible paths visible, so we can click on the path where we want to set our starting point. Then we come out later on the timeline and click where we want the layer to end up at this point. And now the layer follows the path. One last thing to know if you want to use this tool, if you go into the settings for the layer, there's an option hidden down here, Rotate to Follow Path. With this on, your layer will orient to follow the direction of the path as it moves. So let's quickly finish going through the rest of these tools. This next one is actually a really handy tool to know about, the Layer Selector tool. This is going to be an important layer when you have more complex scenes with lots of groups and layers. When you want to edit a piece of artwork, you need to have its layer selected in the Layers palette to be able to interact with that layer. But often it's hard to track down what layer is what, so with the Layer Selector tool, you can just click something on the stage and it will automatically select the layer of whatever you clicked on. Once that's selected, you can switch to another tool and edit the artwork on the layer. Next, there's the Insert Text tool, which is the same as adding a text layer like we looked at before. And lastly, there's the Eyedropper tool. What's special about this version of the eyedropper, as opposed to the ones in the Style palette, is this one, if you use it on a vector shape, it will sample all of the shape's style properties at the same time. So the fill color, the stroke width, and any effects you have applied. So if you want to reuse all the style attributes of a shape, you can easily get them all with this. Great, so that's it for the layer tools. The last very important piece of the interface to understand is the timeline. Now we've got to see a little of how it works already, but next we're going to cover it in more depth. We'll do that in the next video. I'll see you there.